Adama walked barefoot through the dusty paths of the village, her hands weighed down by the heavy basket of firewood she carried. The morning sun cast long shadows, but the weight on her heart was far heavier than the burden on her back. She had learned to live in silence, to endure the whispers and cruel laughter that followed her wherever she went. In a village where family lineage and wealth determined one's worth, she was nothing, a nameless girl with no history, no protection, no future. From the moment she could remember, she had always been alone. Her mother had died when she was just a child, leaving her with nothing but a small pendant strung around her neck. It was old, carved with symbols she couldn't understand, but it was the only thing she had of her mother, and she never let it leave her skin. The villagers often mocked her for it. A worthless girl clinging to worthless jewelry, they sneered. But Adama knew it was not worthless. She could feel it, a strange warmth pulsing beneath her fingers whenever she held it too tightly, as if the pendant was alive. She spent her days working, fetching water from the river, sweeping the chief's courtyard, tending to the fields that were not hers. No one thanked her. No one acknowledged her existence beyond commands and insults. The chief's daughter, Nia, took special pleasure in belittling her. "You think hard work will change your fate?" Nia would laugh, tossing her long, beaded braids over her shoulder. "No one cares about a girl with no name. You will always be beneath us." Adama never spoke back. She had learned early that words meant little in a world where power ruled. But in the silence of the night, when the village was asleep, she would sit by the river and stare at the reflection of the stars. She would trace the edges of her pendant, wondering if it held answers she could not yet see. Then, the dreams began. At first, they were scattered images, flashes of golden halls, voices calling her name, a woman's soft whisper telling her to remember. Then they grew stronger. She saw a throne, empty yet waiting. She saw warriors bowing before her. She saw a great kingdom lost to time. And every time she woke up, her heart pounded as if she had truly lived those moments. She tried to ignore them, to convince herself that they were just dreams, nothing more. But deep inside, something told her otherwise. There was a story buried in her past, one that the village did not know. And if they ever discovered the truth, everything would change. The sun blazed high over the village as Adama knelt by the well, her hands raw from scrubbing the chief's courtyard since dawn. Her body ached, but she knew better than to rest. The village women stood nearby, their sharp eyes watching her every move, ensuring she did not slack off. They never missed a chance to assign her the hardest tasks, hauling water, pounding yam for feasts she was never allowed to taste, washing clothes that did not belong to her. "Faster, girl," one of the women snapped. "Or do you think you are too good for work?" Adama bit her lip and kept scrubbing. She had learned long ago that speaking back only led to more suffering. As she carried a heavy basket of yams towards the market, she heard laughter behind her. Nia, the chief's daughter, strolled toward her, trailed by a group of girls who worshipped her every move. Nia's clothes were adorned with the finest beads, her hair braided with gold rings. She was everything Adama was not, privileged, respected, powerful. "Look at her," Nia sneered, stopping in front of Adama. "A nobody carrying food she will never eat. Tell me, Adama, does it hurt to live without purpose?" Adama's grip tightened on the basket, but she remained silent. "She thinks she is better than us," one of the girls whispered. "She is nothing," Nia said, stepping closer. "She will always be nothing." With that, she tipped the basket, sending yams rolling into the dirt. The girls burst into laughter as Adama dropped to her knees, scrambling to pick them up before the dust ruined them. But just as she grabbed the last one, a sudden shout erupted from the market. "Thief! Someone has stolen from my stall." The market fell silent, and heads turned. Adama looked up just as a furious merchant stormed toward her. It was her, someone cried. Adama's stomach twisted. "No, But the merchant was already upon her, grabbing her by the wrist. "You filthy girl! Always lurking, always watching. Now you've shown your true colors." "I didn't take anything," Adama whispered, her heart pounding. Is that so? The merchant spat. Then why were you in my stall earlier? I saw you near my fruit baskets. Adama's breath caught. She had passed by his stall while running errands, but she had not stolen anything. Still, the villagers had already decided her fate. She has no family, no honor, someone muttered. Punish her, another voice called. The village elders arrived, their stern faces unreadable. They did not ask for proof. They did not ask for her side of the story. Stealing is a crime, one of them declared. She will be punished. Adama felt the weight of the world press down on her as they dragged her to the village square. A cane was brought out, and without protest, she knelt, bracing herself. The first strike burned through her back. The second sent tears to her eyes. But she refused to cry out. She would not give them that satisfaction. When it was over, she stumbled away, her body shaking. She did not know where she was going, only that she needed to be far from their cruel stares. As she reached the outskirts of the village, a voice called out. Adama. She turned to see Tund, one of the village warriors, standing under the shade of a large tree. Unlike the others, he did not look at her with contempt. Are you hurt? He asked, stepping closer. Adama swallowed hard. Does it matter? Tund sighed. It does to me. She looked away, unsure of what to say. He had always been kind to her, offering small gestures of kindness when no one else would. A piece of fruit when she was hungry, a helping hand when her work was too heavy. But even he could not change the way the village saw her. You don't deserve this, Tund said softly. There is something different about you, Adama. I can feel it. Adama let out a bitter laugh. Different? They see me as nothing. Tund shook his head. They are blind. One day, they will see what I see. She wanted to believe him. But after today, she wondered if she would ever belong anywhere. If she had any worth at all. The sun dipped low over the village as the evening fires crackled to life. A hush fell over the people as Grandmother Bintu, the wandering storyteller, took her place in the center of the gathering. She was a woman of great age and wisdom, her face lined with the marks of time, her voice carrying the weight of 100 lifetimes. Whenever she visited, the village listened, for her stories held truths buried in myth and legend. Long ago, Grandmother Bintu began, her voice weaving through the air like a spell. There was a kingdom hidden beyond the great forests, where the rivers sang, and the land was rich with gold and wisdom. It was ruled by a just and powerful family, chosen by the spirits themselves. They carried a sacred emblem, a pendant with an engraving of the sun and moon intertwined. It was said that whoever bore this pendant was the true ruler of the land. Adama, sitting quietly at the edge of the crowd, felt her heart hammer against her ribs. A pendant with the sun and moon? She instinctively touched the one hidden beneath the folds of her worn dress, the only thing she had left from her mother. But peace does not last forever, Grandmother Bintu continued, her voice lowering. Jealousy crept into the hearts of the ruler's own kin. A great betrayal led to their downfall, and the rightful queen was forced into exile, her child lost to the winds of fate. And so, the kingdom fell into ruin, its true ruler forgotten by time. The villagers murmured among themselves, intrigued by the tale. To them, it was just another legend. But Adama sat frozen, her fingers gripping the pendant tightly. Could it be a coincidence? Or was the story something more, something connected to her? That night, as she lay on the mat in her small hut, sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, her dreams were unlike any she had ever known. She saw flashes of a grand palace with golden walls that stretched toward the heavens. She saw a woman with regal eyes, dressed in royal robes, clutching a crying infant to her chest as flames roared behind her. A shadow loomed over them, a faceless figure with a sword drawn. A whisper echoed through the vision. Asterisk, you must remember, Adama. You must reclaim what was lost. Asterisk. She jolted awake, her breath ragged. Her body trembled as she looked down at the pendant resting against her chest, glowing faintly in the darkness. Her mother had never told her where she came from. The village had always treated her as if she were nothing, but what if she was something more? Doubt and excitement warred within her. Could she truly be connected to the lost bloodline Grandmother Binta spoke of? If so, why had her mother never told her the truth? There was only one way to find out. The morning air was thick with whispers as Adama made her way through the village. She could feel the stares, the suspicion in their eyes. Ever since Grandmother Binta's tale, rumors had begun to swirl like a rising storm. Some villagers claimed she carried a treasure from a forgotten kingdom. Others whispered that she was cursed, a child of spirits come to bring misfortune. At first, Adama tried to ignore it, keeping to herself and continuing her daily chores. But the unease in the village only grew stronger. One afternoon, as she fetched water from the river, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with Nia, the chief's daughter, and a small group of villagers. "Where did you get that pendant, orphan?" Nia sneered, her arms crossed. "People say it's no ordinary necklace. That it holds power." Adama clutched the pendant tightly. "It was my mother's," she said firmly. Nia scoffed. "A poor woman like your mother had no such thing. Give it to me. If it truly has power, it belongs to my family." The villagers behind her murmured in agreement, their eyes gleaming with greed. Adama took a step back, her heart pounding. "It belongs to me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Without warning, one of the villagers lunged at her, grabbing at the chain around her neck. Adama struggled, but he was stronger. Just as his fingers closed around the pendant, a blinding light erupted from it. A shockwave of force rippled through the air, sending the attacker flying backward. The ground trembled as a strange energy pulsed through the village. People gasped, stumbling as the force knocked them off their feet. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, the whispers started. "She's not normal. She's dangerous. She must be a witch." Terror gripped the crowd as they backed away from her. Even Nia looked shaken. Adama stared down at her pendant, her own hands trembling. What had just happened? The news spread like wildfire. By the time Adama returned to the village center, she found herself surrounded by a crowd. The village chief, his expression dark, stepped forward. "You carry something unnatural," he declared. "You have deceived us all. Tell me the truth, who are you?" Adama hesitated. She didn't have an answer. All she knew was that the pendant was tied to her past, and somehow, it had protected her. The chief's gaze hardened. "Give me the pendant," he ordered. Adama took a step back, shaking her head. "No." Murmurs of disapproval rose from the villagers. The chief raised his hand, signaling the village warriors. "Take it from her." Adama's breath caught in her throat as the warriors advanced. She turned to run, but they were fast. One grabbed her wrist, another reached for her neck. The moment they touched her, the pendant glowed again, brighter, fiercer. A second wave of energy exploded outward. The warriors were thrown back as if struck by an invisible force. People screamed, running in all directions. Now, there was no doubt. "She's cursed," someone shouted. "She's not one of us," another cried. Fear twisted the chief's features. He pointed a trembling finger at Adama. "Leave," he commanded. "You are no longer welcome here." Adama's heart clenched. She had spent her whole life in this village. It was the only home she had ever known. But looking around at the terrified faces, she knew there was no going back. With one final glance at the people who had rejected her, she turned and ran. She didn't know where she was going, all she knew was that her past was waiting, somewhere beyond the horizon. Adama knew she had to uncover the secrets of her past. Night had fallen by the time Adama reached the edge of the forbidden forest. The trees loomed high above her, their twisted branches clawing at the sky like ancient fingers. The villagers always spoke of this place in hushed whispers, warning of spirits and dangers lurking within. But Adama had nowhere else to go. A strange pull guided her forward, as if the pendant around her neck was leading her somewhere. She stepped cautiously over roots and stones, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. The deeper she went, the louder the whispers in her head became, fragments of voices, calling her name, urging her forward. After what felt like hours, she stumbled into a clearing. A small hut sat at its center, smoke curling from the roof, and in front of it stood an old man wrapped in a deep blue cloak. His face was lined with age, his eyes sharp and knowing. "I have been waiting for you, child," he said, his voice a mixture of wisdom and sorrow. Adama hesitated. "Who are you?" The man took a step forward, studying her. "I am Elder Kofi, the last guardian of Oloran's lost legacy." Adama's breath hitched. "Oloran? The kingdom from Grandmother Binta's story?" He nodded. "Not just a story. A truth buried by time and betrayal. And you, Adama, you are its last surviving heir." Her head spun. "That can't be. I'm just an orphan. I don't even know where I come from." Elder Kofi gestured toward the pendant. "That belonged to your mother, Queen Ebel. It is the key to awakening the power of your bloodline." Adama's fingers tightened around the pendant. "My mother was a queen?" The very idea felt impossible. She had spent her entire life being treated as nothing. How could she be someone so important? Elder Kofi sighed. "Yes, and your father, King Adissa, was a just and noble ruler. But a power-hungry warlord named General Omari betrayed them. He led a coup, slaughtered the royal family, and seized the throne. Your mother, already wounded, managed to escape with you as an infant. She entrusted you to a woman far from the palace, hoping you would be safe." Tears blurred Adama's vision. "She died protecting me," she whispered. Elder Kofi nodded. "She did. And now, you must reclaim what is rightfully yours." Adama shook her head. "I don't know how. I'm not strong, I'm not trained." "You are more powerful than you know," Elder Kofi interrupted. "But power must be harnessed. It is time for you to learn." For the first time in her life, Adama felt a flicker of purpose. She wiped her tears and nodded. "Teach me." Elder Kofi smiled. "Then let us begin." Days turned into weeks as Adama trained under Elder Kofi's guidance. He taught her how to fight, how to move with agility and precision. He helped her channel the energy of the pendant, using it to enhance her senses, her speed, her strength. She learned the history of Oloran, the ways of its people, and the power her family once wielded. But the training was grueling. Her muscles ached, her hands bruised from endless practice. There were moments she wanted to give up, but she reminded herself of everything she had endured, the pain, the humiliation, the betrayal. She could not let fear stop her now. One evening, as she practiced with a wooden staff, a rustling in the bushes made her pause. She gripped her weapon tightly, her heart pounding. "Relax, Adama. It's just me," a familiar voice said. Tund stepped into the clearing, his eyes filled with both worry and admiration. "Tund?" Adama's heart leaped. "What are you doing here?" "I followed you," he admitted. "I had to make sure you were safe." She sighed, shaking her head. "I was banished, Tund. You shouldn't be here." "I don't care about that," he said firmly. "I knew there was something special about you. And now I know the truth. You're the rightful queen of Oloran." She looked down. "Maybe. But I'm not ready." Tund stepped closer. "Then let me help you." She met his gaze, searching for hesitation, but found none. Tund had always been different from the others. He had always believed in her, even when she didn't believe in herself. Elder Kofi watched from a distance and nodded approvingly. "Good. Every queen needs strong allies. The battle ahead will not be easy." Adama clenched her fists. She had spent her whole life feeling powerless. But now, for the first time, she had something worth fighting for. She would not stop until she reclaimed her destiny. The months passed like a blur. Every day, Adama trained harder than the day before. Under Elder Kofi's guidance, she honed her body, mind, and spirit. She mastered the art of combat, wielding a spear with precision, moving like the wind, and striking like a storm. She studied history, learning the wisdom of Olorin's rulers before her. She understood the power of her pendant and how it connected her to the very land her ancestors had once ruled. But it wasn't just physical training. Elder Kofi pushed her beyond her limits. He made her confront her fears, the doubts that had been planted deep within her soul. A leader must know her own worth, he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. Strength alone will not make you a queen. You must believe in the power you hold inside you. One day, deep in the heart of the forbidden forest, Elder Kofi led her to a hidden chamber beneath the roots of an ancient baobab tree. The entrance was sealed with an inscription in a language long forgotten. As Adama ran her fingers over the carved symbols, the pendant around her neck began to glow. The inscription shimmered, and the ground trembled. The door creaked open, revealing a grand chamber lined with torches that lit themselves as they stepped inside. The walls were covered in intricate murals depicting the history of Olorin, her ancestors standing tall, warriors fighting for justice, and a great battle where her parents had been betrayed. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a magnificent staff, carved from the wood of the sacred Irako tree and adorned with golden symbols. Elder Kofi's voice was filled with reverence. The royal staff of Olorin. Only the true heir can wield it. Adama's heart pounded. Could she truly claim it? She stepped forward and wrapped her fingers around the staff. A surge of warmth spread through her body, and in that moment, memories that weren't her own flooded her mind, the laughter of a king and queen, the cries of a kingdom in despair, the promise her mother made to keep her safe. She gasped, steadying herself. I remember them, she whispered. I remember everything. Elder Kofi nodded. Then you are ready, Princess Adama of Olorin. Hearing her true name spoken aloud sent shivers down her spine. For the first time, she truly believed it. She was not just an orphan, not just a girl the village had cast aside. She was a leader, born to reclaim what was stolen. Tund, who had been by her side through it all, smiled. So, what do we do now, Your Highness? She turned to him, her grip tightening on the staff. We go back. The journey back to the village was different this time. She was no longer the quiet, humble girl who had been cast out. She walked with purpose, her head held high, her presence commanding. Tund and Elder Kofi flanked her, and as they approached the village gates, the guards gasped in shock. Word spread like wildfire. The beggar girl had returned, but something was different. The air around her seemed to hum with power, and the pendant she wore gleamed like the rising sun. The villagers, who had once mocked her, now gathered in confusion and awe. Chief Adisa stormed out of his hut, his face twisted in anger. You dare return after your betrayal, he bellowed. Adama met his gaze without fear. The only betrayal was yours, Chief Adisa. You banished me out of fear. But now, you will hear the truth. The crowd murmured. She lifted the staff, planting it firmly into the ground. I am Adama, daughter of Queen Ebel and King Adisa of Olorin. I am the rightful heir to the throne that was stolen from my family. And I have come to reclaim what is mine. A stunned silence followed. Then came the whispers, then the gasps. The chief's face paled. Lies, he spat. You are nothing but a filthy orphan. Elder Kofi stepped forward. The truth cannot be erased. I was there when her mother fled with her as a child. I swore to protect her until the day she was ready. That day has come. The villagers looked at each other, their expressions shifting. Many of them had heard the stories of Olorin's fall, of the lost princess. Now, seeing the pendant, the staff, the undeniable power in her stance, doubt crept into their hearts. Even Nia, the chief's daughter, who had once tormented Adama, took a cautious step back. She carries the staff of Olorin, she stammered. Only the heir can wield it. The chief clenched his fists. This is treason. Adama took a step closer, her voice steady and strong. No. This is justice. The villagers began to murmur again, but this time, it was different. A few stepped forward, kneeling before her. We were wrong, an elder admitted. Forgive us, Princess Adama. One by one, more villagers knelt, bowing their heads. Tun grinned. Looks like they finally see the truth. But Adama knew this was only the beginning. Reclaiming the village was one thing, reclaiming her kingdom was another. General Omari, the warlord who had stolen her parents' throne, was still out there. And she was coming for him. The moment Adama stepped into the village, a heavy silence fell over the people. Those who had once mocked her, humiliated her, and cast her aside as worthless now stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. The sun cast a golden glow on her as she walked, her royal pendant shining against her chest, the royal staff of Oloran in her hand. She was no longer the meek, forgotten orphan. She carried herself with the confidence of a leader, her presence commanding respect. Nia, the chief's daughter, who had once taken pleasure in tormenting her, took a step back, gripping her mother's arm. How is this possible?" she whispered, her face pale with fear. Chief Adissa, who had ordered her banishment, clenched his fists. "This is a trick," he growled. "You are a beggar, a nobody. You expect us to believe you are royalty?" Adama's gaze did not waver. She raised the royal staff and struck it firmly against the ground. A powerful vibration rippled through the earth, sending a gust of wind through the village square. The villagers gasped, some stumbling backward, as the very air around them seemed to recognize her presence. "Enough lies, Chief Adissa," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I am Adama, daughter of Queen Ebel and King Adissa of Oloran. I am the rightful heir to the throne you tried to erase." The elders, who had heard the stories of the lost princess but never believed them, now trembled. One of them, Elder Femi, took a cautious step forward, his eyes scanning her face. "The resemblance," he muttered. "The pendant, the staff. It's true." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some villagers dropped to their knees, while others exchanged fearful glances. The orphan they had mistreated was not just anyone, she was their true queen. Nia clung to her father's side. But we treated her so," she couldn't even finish the sentence. Shame washed over the villagers. The women who had forced Adama to do their chores, the merchants who had accused her of stealing, the warriors who had once threatened her, all of them now stood in the weight of their guilt. Chief Adissa's face darkened with desperation. "This proves nothing," he snapped. "The kingdom of Oloran is gone. Even if you are who you say you are, you have no power here." Adama took another step forward, the crowd parting as she moved toward the chief. "You speak of power as if it belongs to you," she said coldly. "But the true power of a ruler does not come from fear or greed, it comes from justice, wisdom, and the people's trust." She turned to the villagers. "For years, you have allowed oppression to thrive. You have watched the weak suffer while the strong took what they pleased. That ends today." A murmur spread through the crowd. Could they really change? Could they right their wrongs? Elder Femi, still kneeling, looked up at her with tearful eyes. "Princess Adama, we have failed you. We failed your parents, and we failed our people. What must we do to make things right?" Adama studied them for a moment, then lifted her chin. "You must change. The way you treat the weak, the poor, the ones without status, it must end. No more forced labor. No more blind obedience to corruption." She turned back to Chief Adissa. "And as for you?" The chief glared at her, but the fear in his eyes betrayed his confidence. "You banished me out of fear of what I might become," she said. "But it is your own greed and cruelty that have doomed you." The villagers murmured in agreement. The tide had turned. Tund, standing beside her, smirked. "It seems your time is up, Chief Adissa." The chief looked around, realizing that his power was slipping. No one stood with him, not even his own daughter. Nia let go of his arm and stepped back. I didn't know," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't know who she was. If I had, Adama turned to her. "It should not have mattered who I was," she said. "No one deserves to be treated as less than human. And now, you have to live with what you've done." Tears welled in Nia's eyes as she lowered her head in shame. The villagers, one by one, began to kneel. "Forgive us," they pleaded. "Please, Princess Adama." Adama took a deep breath. This was her moment. This was the beginning of a new era. "I will not seek revenge," she said. "But justice must be served. The time of corrupt rule is over." The warriors of the village, once loyal to the chief, now turned to Adama and bowed their heads. "What are your orders, Your Highness?" Adama's grip on the royal staff tightened. She had spent her whole life searching for her place in the world. Now, she had found it. "It is time to reclaim my kingdom," she declared. "And you will all be part of its rebirth." The village erupted into cheers. Chief Adissa, now powerless, fell to his knees. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of true fear. Adama looked at the faces around her, once full of scorn but now filled with hope. She was no longer the forgotten girl of the village. She was the ruler they never knew they needed. The night was eerily quiet, a silence that carried the weight of an approaching storm. Just as the village began to accept Adama as their rightful ruler, a distant rumble echoed through the land. The sky, once calm, darkened as the sound of galloping hooves and clanking weapons grew louder. The warlord had come. His army was vast, made up of ruthless mercenaries and warriors who had long terrorized nearby villages. At the front of the procession rode a towering figure clad in dark armor, General Okoro, the very man who had led the coup against Adama's parents years ago. His eyes burned with the same greed and cruelty that had stolen her family and kingdom from her. Villagers ran for cover, their newfound hope now replaced by terror. Chief Adissa, once arrogant and proud, now trembled as he stumbled toward Adama, falling to his knees. "Princess Adama," he stammered, his voice unsteady. "You must save us. I was wrong about you. Please, do not let them destroy our village." Adama looked down at him, the same man who had mocked, humiliated, and exiled her. Now, he was nothing more than a frightened old man. But she had no time for revenge, her people needed her. She turned to Tund, who stood by her side, ready for battle. "Gather every able fighter," she commanded. "We cannot run. We must stand our ground." The villagers hesitated. "But we are farmers, traders, how can we fight against an army?" one of them asked. Adama raised the royal staff of Oloran high, and a golden light pulsed from its core. "We fight not with just weapons, but with unity, strategy, and courage." She stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "This village is our home. Our land. If we do not stand today, there will be no tomorrow." Her words ignited a fire in the hearts of the villagers. The warriors who had once served Chief Adissa now stood behind Adama. The hunters, farmers, blacksmiths, all prepared to defend their land. The battle began at dawn. Okoro's army stormed the village, expecting an easy victory, but they were met with fierce resistance. Traps had been laid throughout the village, pits disguised as roads, burning barricades to block their advance, and warriors hidden in trees, striking from above. Tund led a group of archers, raining arrows upon the invaders, while Adama fought on the front lines. With every strike of her staff, a force of energy knocked enemies back. She fought with the spirit of her ancestors, her movements swift and precise. Okoro, seeing his army struggle, let out a furious roar and charged toward Adama. "You should have died with your parents," he spat. Adama met his attack head-on. Their weapons clashed, sending sparks into the air. Okoro was strong, but Adama was fueled by something greater, justice. As they battled, Adama saw the fear in his eyes. He had ruled through terror, but now, he faced someone who would not bow. With one final strike, she knocked him to the ground, her staff glowing with energy. "It ends today, Okoro," she declared. "For my parents. For my people." The warlord's army, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat. The village erupted into cheers as they chased the invaders away. Adama stood tall, victorious. She had not just saved the village, she had reclaimed her destiny. As the dust settled and the village stood in awe of what had just transpired, Adama looked around at the people who once ridiculed and mistreated her. Their faces were a mixture of shame, regret, and newfound respect. Chief Adissa, now stripped of his arrogance, stepped forward with his head bowed. "Princess Adama, we have wronged you. We judged you without knowing your worth. Can you ever forgive us?" The villagers murmured in agreement, their eyes filled with remorse. The same hands that had once pointed at her in mockery now reached out in apology. Adama took a deep breath. The weight of her past pain pressed against her heart, but she knew that vengeance would not heal the wounds of yesterday. She had spent years suffering under their cruelty, yet now, she held the power to break the cycle of injustice. "I forgive you," she said, her voice steady. "But let this be a lesson to all. You judged me because I was poor, because I had no family name. You never cared to see the strength inside me, nor the value of my spirit. If I had been nothing but an orphan, would I not still deserve kindness?" The villagers hung their heads in shame. She continued, "A village is not great because of wealth or titles. It is great because of its people, because of the way they treat each other. From this day forward, no one shall be treated as less. No child will go hungry. No girl will be forced to prove her worth." A soft wind carried her words through the village, and the people, one by one, knelt before her, not out of fear, but out of true respect. Tun stepped beside her, pride shining in his eyes. "You were always meant to be more, Adama." She turned to him with a knowing smile. "And now, we build something greater, together." Under Adama's leadership, the village thrived like never before. The weak were protected, the poor were uplifted, and unity became their greatest strength. No longer would they judge by status, but by character. And so, the girl they once dismissed as a nobody became the ruler they all needed. They never respected her, until they discovered who she really was.